This recording is for Chapter 8. At the very beginning, when I gave you an announcement, I gave you an alternate site right here for your lab manual. I didn't realize that there were two different versions of the lab manual. This is the one that has the answers. So hopefully you can go to bluegrass.kctcs.edu, education training, programs, biology 137 virtual lab index. Or you can simply click on it like that. And there's the lab manual. And over on the side, we have the different labs. So I'm going to be doing lab 8 with you. And it breaks it down into part 1 through 5, and it labels them, which is so nice. So here's part 1, the muscle man. And you can view it as plain with nothing or outlined. So they draw a picture around each of, like here's your pecs, your pectorals, or you can have it numbered like that. So you can tell which one is which that way. And then underneath it, it gives the names of the different ones that you're supposed to memorize. Right there. So you can show or hide the answer key. So that's kind of nice. So let's start with the front, if it will let us. If you look at this list, it's rather overwhelming. But then when you stop and look at it and break it down into pieces, it's not nearly as bad as you thought it was. So if you look, number 1 is the frontalis, and it's the muscle over the frontal area of your skull and the frontal lobe of your brain. So luckily they're all kind of named frontal, frontalis, so that makes it rather easy. And then you have a circular muscle around the eye, and if you think about things going in a circle, you talk about orbiting. So this is the orbicularis oculi. Here's the word orbicularis oculi, meaning a circular muscle around the eye. And you have a circular muscle around your lips, and that's the orbicularis oris. So if you're going to get something mixed up, the orbicularis oris and the orbicularis oculi both look a little bit alike, but oculi has to do with ocular or eye, so you should be able to keep those two separated. This one, the sternocleidomastoid, tells you that it's connected to the sternum and up into the mastoid region up there. So sternocleidomastoid tells you where it's located and what it's attached to. And then the number 5 is the zygomatic. So you remember when we were learning the parts of the skull, and then we had the zygomatic bone, and there's the muscle laying on top of it. So all of that should be fairly straightforward to you. And in this one, it's kind of hard to figure out which thing is which because the guy has his arm raised. So it's a little bit easier over here. You have the same 25 and 24 as you have 25 and 24 here. It's just here you're seeing the underside of the arm, and here you're seeing the arm in the correct anatomical position. So when you clench your fist and pull your arm in, you're showing off your biceps. So your biceps are this one right there, and then your triceps are on the other side of your arm. So when one of those is contracted, the other is extended, and when the other one is extended, the other one's contracted. And so that's how we can pull our arm in or straighten our arm out, depending on which thing we're trying to do. And then right here is the deltoid muscle, and I thought it would be kind of fun to show you a video of an actual autopsy where they're showing you the deltoid muscle. So let's see if I can get that to play for you. And this is a freshly deceased person. The meat is still very red. And here's the point of attachment on the scapula, and then along onto the clavicle. And the deltoid right there is over that whole area. And you can use your brain to just contract those muscles, that part of the muscle, and pull your arm back or pull your arm forward, or if you did it right there, it'll pull your arm straight out. So the deltoid can move different directions depending on which way you want to recruit it. So here's the deltoid right there. And then if you're looking with the arm upraised, here's the deltoid right there. All right. And then this one right here is the trapezius. It runs along right there, trapezius. So it's behind the sternocleidomastoid. Everybody knows the pecs. So these are your pecs. So the pecs are actually known as the pectoralis major, right there. And your abs are actually known as the rectus abdominis. 21, external oblique. So they're to the outside of the abs, or rectus abdominis, if you want to say it correctly. We're usually familiar with the biceps and the triceps. If you're looking at an old person and they hold their arm out, you see a bunch of loose skin hanging down underneath their arms. That's where the triceps are. And you need to learn to say triceps brachii and biceps brachii, because you also have biceps and triceps in your leg. So if you just say triceps and biceps, people go, well, which ones? And you're almost always talking about the ones in your arm. Now, two of the muscles that a lot of people get confused are these right there. So 65 is the tensor fasciae latae, and 31 is their sartorius. 32, rectus femoris. Well, luckily, femoris is running along the femur, so that kind of gives that one away. And 35 is the adductor longus. So when you're taking a body part and pulling it in, you're adding it to your body. So you would need a muscle that can do adductor motions. You're going to find some muscles will move things away from the body, and we call those abductors. So abduct would be like to kidnap someone, to take them away. So abduct takes things away. Adduct pulls them in closer to the midline of the body. So that's the adductor longus right there. And it'll help you pull your legs together right there. And remember, you've got one on either side. So you don't know on a quiz, are they going to ask you this one or that one? So you're thinking, oh man, I know it over here, but now I don't know what it is over there. So just pay attention. Also, they've rotated the leg a bit. So here you have 32, which is the rectus femoris, running down to the kneecap, and here you have it on the outside, on the lateral area. So it's a little bit confusing. So look and make sure that you see when you have pairs of things, like your external obliques, this muscle, the external obliques, that you realize there's one on both sides. Here is your knee. And right here, 48 is the vastus medialis, so it's towards the middle of the body, and the 49 is the vastus lateralis, and it's towards the outside of the body. So if you look at this, you can see the vastus medialis, and then here's where the guy has his leg rotated out, and you don't see the vastus lateralis because it's on around on the other side. So be aware of what's going on there. And then we get down to the tibialis anterior. So of course it's going to run along your tibia, and the fact that it says anterior is on the front of your body. So remember, the front of your body is anterior and the back is the posterior. And then your gastrocnemius is your calf muscle. So if you get a Charlie horse, where usually you drink too much caffeine and you pee out too much of your electrolytes, it'll cause your legs, especially the calf muscle, to cramp into a big tight knot that won't release, and it hurts. And sometimes if you work it, you can ease the knot out of the Charlie horse, but it'll usually hurt for a few days. So take-home message there: if you're going to drink a lot of caffeine, make sure that you get enough salt and potassium to keep, if you sweat it all out or pee it all out because you're drinking caffeine, it can cause cramps. All right, what else? I think that's it. We've done all the parts on this muscle man. So then we go to the arm muscles, and it just pops you over to the arm muscles. And we can do the same thing. We can go into the plane view like this and see if you remember the deltoid and the biceps and the triceps brachii. Or you can see it outlined, or you can see it labeled. Now, there are over 600 muscles in the body, so we're just learning a handful, and the ones that we're learning are the external ones. Underneath these muscles are other muscles, and they're still finding muscles, and we all don't have the same muscles. So that's kind of surprising. I mean, we all have 2 eyes, and we all have 2 ears, so we all should have the exact same bones and the exact same muscles, but we don't. So that's kind of an odd thing to think about. So in this picture, we already know the deltoids, the biceps, the triceps, and now we're going to go down and look at the lower arm. And there's the brachioradialis, and there it's running along the radius, the radial bone, and there's your thumb. So there you can orient yourself always with your thumb. Here's the palmaris longus, and obviously it's going to have something to do with your palm, and it is a long muscle. So sometimes the name of the muscle tells you whether it's a long one or a short one. The flexor carpi ulnaris is running along the ulnar region, so that would be the one again by your little finger over there. So it helps to orient yourself if you know where the bones are, where the elbow is, where the knee is. That'll help you a little bit there. Extensor digitorum. So that one you're going to have to be careful about, because look how these are long and they're coming down to the hand. So how are you going to remember which one is the extensor digitorum and which one is the palmaris longus? So whatever it takes, know that those look a lot alike, and so don't get those mixed up. And there's the extensor carpi radialis longus there. And that's it for that one. I do want to show you something here. It looks like somebody has taken a piece of strapping tape and run it across here. And all of these tendons right there coming down here are held down by this band. And you guys are very familiar with it because it's like everybody has it. Carpal tunnel syndrome. So this band, if you keep working your muscles, if you keep working your fingers, and you're like typing on a computer or playing the piano or something, you're going to rub underneath this, and it's going to get inflamed, and it's actually going to pinch off the nerves that run under there. So not only do you have the attachments to your fingers, to the muscles, but you've also got the nerves in there. So when your hand starts going numb, you may very well have carpal tunnel syndrome. So that's the tunnel right there. We already did these when we did the muscle man, but this is a closer up picture, and so you can easily see the frontalis over the frontal lobe of the brain, the orbicularis oculi, the circular muscle that allows you to wink and shut your eye, the zygomaticus runs across the zygomatic bone, the masseter, which allows you to open and shut your mouth and chew, and then the orbicularis oris, which allows you to make little pouting faces and purse your lips. And then the sternocleidomastoid is running down there. So we've already done the face. It should be fairly easy because other than sternocleidomastoid, it's all something we've talked about before. All right, I clicked on part 4, the leg muscles. I'm going to outline the muscles that we're going to learn, and we're going to label them. All righty. So again, I told you that the ones that you guys are going to get confused, the sartorius, the adductor longus, and the gracilis. For some reason, those are just so hard to remember which is which. So here is somebody that's standing knock-kneed, meaning their knees are pointed outward, like that. So you're looking at the side. It's a little bit confusing. So in this one, here's your biceps femoris. And you know on the other side where you can't see it, there's the triceps femoris too. And the big, to be crude, the butt cheeks, the ones that make you well-rounded in the back end, is your gluteus maximus. And a lot of people just call them glutes. So you got to exercise your glutes and firm them up. So gracilis, adductor longus, sartorius, and rectus femoris. And again, the rectus femoris is running along the femur, so that gives you a little help there on that one. And then again, remember, always on both sides. You have this, and there's your vastus lateralis, running right there down to your kneecap. And there's your vastus medialis, which is more inward. But again, you can't really tell it because they've got the knee twisted outward. So in your mind, take this knee and pull it forward, and then that'll put this vastus medialis back inside here, where we want it to be. The gastrocnemius, here it is, and you all know the name of this particular tendon. It goes from the gastrocnemius down to the calcaneal bone, right there, and that is your Achilles tendon. Achilles tendon. And this has been renamed. I have always known it as the peroneus. But this makes more sense because it runs along the fibula and it is a long muscle. So fibularis longus is a very descriptive name for that particular muscle, but you're going to find that almost everyone calls it the peroneus. So I would learn that with both names, otherwise you're going to get confused. again, here's your tibialis anterior, and because the person has their foot turned out that way, this is the front of the person. And then there's their toes right there. So that runs along the tibia, and it's in the anterior, so that should be fairly easy to get that one. The fifth part of Lab 8 shows you the histology. So we're actually going to look at the various muscle tissues under the microscope. And the smooth muscle is the muscle that is not striated, it does not have stripes on it, and it is not under your control. Now, if you really want it to be under your control, you can do yogi meditations and practice, and you can actually take over your smooth muscle. But luckily for us, we don't have to think about it. Our body just does it without us even consciously talking about it. So you actually have to think about raising your arm. Your arm just won't raise by itself. But your food will go down, your urine will come out, and you don't have to sit there and tell the muscles to contract to push the urine out. So it's smooth muscle is mostly in the walls of hollow organs. So the uterus would be one, so you push a baby out, your bladder's one, so it's hollow and pushes urine out, and so on. So it does not have stripes. It's going to be red because it's a muscle, and it has flattened nuclei, but not nearly as flat as the ones we're going to see when we're looking at the striated or the skeletal muscle. So here's two different pictures of smooth muscle under different magnifications. So if it weren't red, you could almost think it was dense, regular connective tissue, but that's white, and this is red. So you have the long, skinny fibers, and if you zoom in, you see the nucleus there. This is also a different stain, so they're not staining the nucleus brightly, but here you can clearly see the nucleus, and it stands out right there. So that's what smooth muscle looks like. Now here, coming on down, is cardiac muscle. And let me make that bigger because you really need to look at it up close. All right. This, if you look carefully, you can see stripes on it right there. And then you see this. Looks like somebody's taken a rubber band and grabbed a handful of these fibers and wrapped it with a rubber band. That's kind of what it looks like to me. And these are called intercalated discs. And you're going to see those in cardiac muscle. So anytime you see these stripes like this, the intercalated disc, you know you're in the heart. And this is really important because you want the heart, all the muscles, to contract simultaneously. So when we looked at the deltoid muscle, you can talk with your brain to the front of your deltoid and say, just contract the muscle fibers in the front, and you'll pull your arm forward. And then you can talk to the muscle fibers in the back of the deltoid, and it'll pull your arm backwards. Or you can talk to the ones in the middle, and it'll cause you to raise your arm up. So you can talk to the different muscle fibers in the skeletal muscles. But in the cardiac, I don't want that. I want the whole heart to beat, and then relax, and then beat, and then relax. So you do this by way of these intercalated discs, because it's kind of like a three-legged race. If you're in the sack with somebody, you have to do whatever they do. So if you are connected to all these other fibers, then any message, any electrical or chemical information that's going to be passed along will go to all the fibers through these connections. So intercalated disc, here's the word intercalated disc, is very important. So make sure that you know that. and it makes up the heart. It's the muscle. Myo means muscle of the heart. So it's involuntary. So even though it's striated, even though it has stripes, it's involuntary. But again, you can take over the heart. If your heart's beating too hard, you can actually talk to it and say, all right, calm down, take some deep breaths. You don't need to be beating that hard. And you can actually watch your heartbeat lower if you just do calming talking to it. And then the involuntary kicks back in and you start beating it at a regular lower beat, which is what you want. So if you're having a panic attack or your heart's beating too hard, you can talk to it, but normally it is involuntary. Involuntary, meaning you don't have to think about it. It'll just do it all by itself. And now we get down into the skeletal muscle, and you can easily see the stripes. So it's called striated or striped. Let's see if I can pull down so you can see the words. All right, there you go. Striations or stripes. And you have dark A bands. So those darker stripes are called A bands. And the light stripes in between the dark are called I bands. And you can see the nuclei are really squished flat. So all of these things let you know that you've got skeletal muscle. And these are voluntary. They will wait until you tell them to do something. So here's a video that I like to use, and it shows you the striations. You can see the dark A and the light I bands. But this is actual muscle, and they're taking a picture under the microscope, and you can watch it. So there's the muscle contracting. And you see the A bands and the I bands go away as the muscle shortens. So there's the actual muscle fibers acting. I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, is there anything over there? Frog muscle. Alrighty. Make it a little bit bigger. And pause. And back you up. While we're looking at videos, I wanted to show you this picture right here. And this is a frog muscle, so they've cut the frog leg off, and instead of eating it, they have attached it right here, and there you have a cattle prod or a taser. Anyway, this is going to have electricity that's going to spark across here, and hopefully you learned in lecture that your muscles and your nerves work with electricity. So by applying electricity to this, it takes over where the brain would send out a chemical message and cause a muscle to contract. You can do it with electricity. You've seen people do this with paddles to restart someone's heart. You just run a jolt of electricity through them, and it causes them to not only their heart start beating, but it also causes all of their muscles to contract. And so they kind of look like they're jumping on the table because you're making all of their muscles contract. So one of the things you were supposed to do was watch a couple of videos and answer some questions, and you've already had a quiz over that. So here is a muscle twitch. So there are the guys pushing down and giving an electric jolt, and as the electricity goes through, you see the muscle contract. So those are called muscle twitches. That's a muscle twitch. So we saw one video showing the A bands and the I bands merging together and then releasing, merging together. So you saw the individual fibers contracting. And now here is a whole muscle. So this is the pectoralis major. And again, the person is obviously not alive. So let's see what happens when this guy touches his pectoralis major. See where it attaches? Right there. And it just pulls right over. But because your pecs are voluntary, they're strided, you can make it move like that with your mind. So you just talk to your muscles and tell it how much you want it to move. And we talked about recruitment. And recruitment is where you don't use all of your muscle fibers. You just use the number that you need. So the only time I can think of where you'd need to recruit all of your muscles would be if you were trying to lift your car up or something like that. So you would need every single muscle fiber that you possibly could muster. But think about when you shake somebody's hand, how many muscle fibers do you have to fire in order to gently shake someone's hand? Or if you want to firmly shake somebody's hand, you're going to have to recruit more muscle fibers. And if you're going to arm wrestle somebody, you're really going to have to recruit a lot more muscle fibers to try to beat somebody at hand wrestling. So you can actually talk to these muscle fibers individually. So the more precisely you do that, the more fine motor control you have, the more skilled you have. So if you watch a baby trying to walk, they don't have control over their skeletal muscles. They don't have control over these stripes, the actin and the myosin in these stripes. But as they practice and practice, they can talk to more and more of their muscle fibers, and so that they can get more precise. We're going to see the same picture in the next chapter, and I do want to point out this whole thing is the cell body. This whole thing. That's where your mitochondria and your ribosomes and the plasma reticulum and all of that stuff exists right there. And it is labeled 3. So you're looking at 3 and thinking, are they looking at the mitochondria there or what? But the 3 is supposed to be this entire thing right there. And then inside is the nucleus. There's the nuclear envelope right there. And it is indicated by arrow 2. So that's pointing to the nucleus. And then inside the nucleus, you have a darker staining area, and that's RNA. And that RNA is making ribosomes. So it is called the nucleolus. So the nucleolus is inside the nucleus. So be careful with your numbers 1, 2, and 3. And make sure up here the cell body is 3. This whole thing. Now coming off of the cell body, you have axons and you have dendrites. So if you only have one thing going off, that's usually the axon. If you have multiple things coming off, that's usually the dendrites. So the electrical or chemical message comes in through the dendrites, comes through the cell body, and then goes out away through the axon. Axons away. And all of these little dots all around here are the nuclei of much smaller cells, and their function is to help the neuron right there. So that's what those guys are doing. And People who are very creative, like Einstein, have a lot more glial cells. If you're really applying yourself in this class and you're studying, you're actually growing new glial cells and you're making new connections. So you can't make any more nerve cells, but you certainly can have more glial cells and more connections between the different nerve cells in your brain, the neurons in your brain. You need to go to the lab manual that does not have answers to get the rest of this lab. So if you come down here, you need to be able to tell what these different muscles do. Again, a lot of them are very obvious what they do. The frontalis is around your frontal lobe. It's going to raise your eyebrows and wrinkle your forehead. So that's where the frontalis is. The orbicularis oculi closes your eye or causes you to squint. The orbicularis oris closes your lips or opens your lips. You can make an O, you can whistle, you can kiss. So it's a circular muscle that changes the shape of your mouth. The sternocleidomastoid flexes, tilts, and rotates your head. The zygomaticus raises the corner of your mouth so you can smile. The masseter elevates, which pulls up your lower jaw and allows you to chew. So going through these, your trapezius allows you to shrug your shoulders. So if you can remember that muscle, if you clap your hand to the back of your neck, you're laying your hand on the trapezius. So that's the one that's going to allow you to shrug your shoulder. The latissimus dorsi extends, adducts. Adducts, remember, brings in towards the body and medially rotates your arm. So the latissimus dorsi does that. Your pecs, your pectoralis major, in women it's underneath our breast. In guys who are out of shape or getting old, it's underneath their breast too. But it flexes, adducts, and medially rotates the arm. So the major flexes and the latissimus dorsi extends. So pay attention to because those look a lot alike. The external oblique causes lateral rotation of the vertebral column. So if you ever want to laugh, go to YouTube and watch pictures of people twisting. That used to be a dance thing. And so you would use your external obliques to do that. And you could get really sore if you weren't used to dancing like that. And the rectus abdominis, you guys know when you do your abs and you want a six-pack abs, that you do sit-ups. So you flex your vertebral column using your rectus abdominis. So rather than go through all of these, just look and see which ones extend your hand, which ones flex your hand, which one abducts. The deltoid can abduct, which means take your arm out. Like if you're pointing go west, you abducted your arm. And of course you can flex your arm, which causes your biceps to contract also. So usually you have more than one muscle working at a time. So make sure you look at all of these and know which muscle does what. So here's a list of them right there. And then you had some questions you were supposed to answer. So what is a motor unit? Well, your muscles won't work without a nerve to cause it to work. So a motor unit is the end of the axon where it actually touches the muscle fiber. So that's a motor unit. It's the nerve, or the neuron, touching some muscle fibers, and it will cause motion. So that's a motor unit. And motor unit recruitment, that's where you use your mind and you get more and more of the muscle fibers to contract or relax. So it's under your control. You can recruit more and more, however many you need to do whatever task. If you're just going to pick up a pencil versus if you're going to pick up a 30-pound weight. Tonus. Normally your muscles aren't completely limp at any time. You'll always have a few of your muscle fibers contracted, and that's so that you have what we call muscle tone. Now, if you've ever looked at somebody who's asleep, who's truly asleep and not pretending, the muscles go slack, their mouth comes open, a lot of times they drool, and so they have much less muscle tone. So tonus is what we call muscle tone, where you have a few of your muscle fibers contracted to keep the shape of your face. Look at someone who has a stroke. They can't talk to the muscles in their face anymore because they've had damage to the nerves that talk to their face. And so one side will be limp and the other side will be pulled up. So when they smile, only one side goes up and the other one stays down. And when they try to eat, they can't close that part of the mouth, so a lot of times the food starts leaking out of the side where they can't close their mouth. So they've lost the tonus, they've lost the muscle tone. Fatigue. If you contract a muscle, it's electrically and chemically fired, and if you run out of electricity or if you run out of the chemical, then the muscle's not going to work. It's just like your phone. If you don't keep juicing it, if you don't keep plugging it in and recharging it, it'll go dead on you. So muscle fatigue means the muscle can't contract anymore. So you're going to have to get some more ATP in there. You're going to have to allow it to relax and then recharge, and then it'll go again. So you want to make sure that all of your muscle fibers don't fatigue at once. So if you've ever watched somebody carrying something really heavy like a piano, and then all of a sudden they drop it, their muscles fatigued, they couldn't hold it any longer, and so they dropped it. So usually you can feel it coming on. You go, okay, I got to put this down for a minute, and then you allow your muscles to recharge. Psychological fatigue and physiological fatigue. So checking online for psychological versus physiological fatigue. Physiological fatigue, you actually are lacking the chemical to make the muscle fire because you've overdone it. You've actually overused it, and you're going to have to recharge your muscle. But psychological fatigue is where you can't get your muscles to work because you are bored, or you are drunk, or you're stressed out. It's like, I can't do it. My muscles will not do it. My brain will not do it. Sleep deprivation, it's very hard, like driving, to make your muscles do what you want them to do. So a lot of times you're swerving around on the road. So there are different kinds of fatigue, and some are in your mind, that would be your psychological, and some of them are actually at the muscle itself. Some more of the questions you were supposed to do before you came to lab last week. You were supposed to know the answer to these. And why do some motor units only have a few muscle cells? If you want to do something that is very precise, you don't want to have a whole lot of muscles going at the same time. You only want to recruit a few of them so that you have very precise motions. And a constant state of low-level tension in a muscle is called tonus. A twitch is a contraction due to a single stimulus. So we watched that little frog's leg twitch every time they zapped it one time with electricity. 3 phases of muscle contraction. You have your latent phase, and then you have your contraction and relaxation phases. Temporal summation occurs when a second contraction is added to the first. So temporal means time. So you don't give it enough time to have one muscle fiber to relax before you send a message and cause a second contraction. So that's temporal summation. And this is a good thing. So you're sending the message, okay, let's contract. All right, that's not enough. Let's contract some more. All right, let's contract some more. And you send the message out, and you get just the right amount of contraction. Now, when people get old and they can't do this, they have shakes and tremors. And that's their muscles not recruiting correctly, not having muscle tone, not having proper temporal summation. If you can get your muscles to fire in a rhythm, so when one of them relaxes, another one fires, and when that one relaxes, another one fires, so it looks like you have a continuous contraction, we call this tetany. And most people think tetany or tetanus is a horrible thing, but it isn't. Tetany is what you want to achieve if you want to be graceful and not clumsy. You want to achieve tetany. You don't want to shake. You don't want to quiver. You don't want to have tremors. So tetany in that case is good. The disease tetanus, you actually end up with your muscles not working and you smother to death. And it's a horrible, horrible way to die, which is why we all have vaccinations for tetanus to prevent the disease, not tetany. A muscle contraction, the strength of it is determined by how much stimulation you have, how fast the stimulation is coming in, and also if you have an unstretched muscle, you're not going to get as strong of a muscle contraction, and if you've overstretched your muscle, you're not going to get as much of a muscle contraction. So if you have a moderately stretched muscle, you're going to have the strongest contraction. And that makes kind of sense. If you have good muscle tone, then you're going to have stronger muscles. So that just kind of makes sense. And that's it for this chapter.